My father started this business back in 1948, him and his two brothers after they came out of World War II. It's been in our family since then. It's now into the third generation. I love this business. Grew up in it, washing dishes, working all different stations of the restaurant. 1978, my father bought out his remaining brother, and that's when myself and my brothers and sisters entered this business. So now it is our family. And now the third generation, my children and my brothers and sisters' children are in the business, and it's just so satisfying to see the family traditions being carried on. And my mother and father are so proud of what they created here, and we love this business. We love Cooper's, and it's become an institution here in northeastern Pennsylvania. I first want to take you back to where we were in 1993 before we had a workplace safety committee. We were at the time paying $90,000 a year just for our workers' comp premium. I can recall being in the office with my brother Jack, and we had 5 competitive bids to open up, and $90,000 was the cheapest bid out of the 5. And we looked at each other like, oh my God, how are we going to pay for this insurance? And my brother Jack, who's always real quick with figures, said, that's over 7,955 lobster tails dinners we have to sell every year just to pay for workers' comp, let alone everything else. When you have an accident in the kitchen, the whole morale of the kitchen it sort of gets down. It's a pretty lousy thing when someone slices the tip of their finger off, or they fall down the cellar steps, or they slip and fall in the cooler and they break their arm. Now you've got this, like, it puts a real damper on morale. And back in '93, that was the case. I mean, not only were we paying high premiums, low morale in the kitchen because there were so many accidents, and people were working overtime to compensate. It wasn't a good situation. I know as far as what it's meant to the kitchen, not only would we have a high workers' comp premium, but you as a kitchen manager, when we lost an employee to cutting the tip of their finger off on the slicer or whatever, that person had to be replaced.
Sure, because you have to, when you lose an employee, out on an accident and they're out for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time, your other staff that you have to pick up that slack, and therefore it causes the restaurant a lot of overtime, and so not only is it the cost of the accident and your premiums, but you're also paying that overtime to other employees who are now covering for that person who had got hurt.
We asked our agent that we went with that year, like, what can we do to get this premium down? And he turned us on to the workplace safety committee. And we implemented it. We went throughout our restaurant. We chose equal amounts of management and employee representation, and we gave everybody a designated area in their zone to inspect every month, and then they had to report that directly to the safety committee, and they come up with checklists of problem areas.
Everybody from each department kind of gets to have their input, because of course it's a big place, and there's a lot of different areas, and there might be things that as a kitchen manager I don't see in the restaurant that maybe are unsafe, whereas a server might. So it's actually good to get that good mix of people in there to give their input and let us know what might be going on in a part of the restaurant that we are unaware of.
The next thing we did was my kitchen manager Steve and myself, we reviewed the accidents for the previous 3 years. We were amazed at the frequency of accidents that we had. And we took our findings to the safety committee. We came to them with these problems and said, what can we do about such and stuff? Like, the number one problem we found was people were stabbing themselves with oyster knives consistently. It was just one of the major problems in our business because we open oysters. It's just a constant thing.
As you mentioned before, that was one of our areas that we had a tremendous amount of accidents. Basically what would happen was when people were opening the oysters, they would stab themselves with the end of the oyster knife.
The tip of the knife, the oyster shell shatters, and the knife will go right through your hand, which it did for years and years. I was actually in a nightclub and I met a guy that was talking to him about our workers' comp and the premium, and then I told him about our kitchen manager and myself, amazed at the amount of stabbings we had. He goes, I've got a simple solution. He said, I have a rubber-coated canvas glove that we sell. He said, they're really inexpensive, like $1.75 for a pair.
Once we had heard about these gloves, we had purchased them. It's been years now, actually, since we've had one incident of someone getting cut with an oyster knife.
That's a very inexpensive solution. We buy them by the dozens now. We keep throwing them out when they have the least little bit of wear, because that's one of the things we found out, that there's no savings in trying to make something last a little bit longer when it comes to safety. We always found out it's better just to replace and keep it updated.
Another great thing that we had implemented here at the restaurant that had to do with cuts is in our slicer area. There was a time where we had frequently had people get caught using the slicer, cleaning the slicer, that kind of a thing.
So we found this mesh glove what Shane is wearing that is impervious to the blade of the slicer. You can run your hand against the slicer, and it's made out of steel mesh coated with nylon, and that has pretty much prevented any more cuts on the slicer.
Prior to having those gloves, we had many incidents where people had gotten cut and really hurt themselves badly.
When they get done slicing, they take the slicer apart and they clean it, and they make sure that they wear that mesh glove, because that's another area where they get cut as you're cleaning off the blade. You have to get in there with your hand, and we found that there were a lot of accidents when they were cleaning the slicer just as well as slicing. Another area that we found a lot of accidents were slip and falls. In the kitchen, there's a lot of spills with grease and people dropping stuff off of trays, and in our dishwashing area, there's a lot of water being sprayed around by the dishwashers and the pot sink. So we instituted this anti-fatigue, anti-slip mat that we put in all the critical areas of the kitchen. These anti-skid mats they're grease-proof, slip-proof. Without these mats, when they spill grease on the floor or a piece of cucumber or something, inevitably they're going to slip and fall.
It makes it much easier on your knees, especially, and you don't slip and slide.
Another thing that we've made mandatory in the restaurant is all employees are required to wear a non-slip shoe. And we have a company that you can actually purchase them through our payroll.
The employees will give me their order. I'll go on the computer, I'll order for them off the Shoe Circus website. Then what we do is, once the shoes come, we give them to the employee, and our payroll person here at the restaurant, basically like they'll deduct maybe if it's like a $50 pair of shoes, maybe she'll take it out over 5 or 6 payments that will automatically come out of your check. Like I said before, it just makes it affordable.
Oh, they work great. They're very sturdy, non-skid, and work well on the wet floor. Well, I had this pair for about 6 months, and I haven't had to change it yet. So maybe once a year, twice a year.
Another thing that we've done is we use this substance called Absorb It, and any grease spills, you take this powder, you sprinkle it on the spill, you sweep it up, and now the floor becomes non-skid again.
That has completely absorbed the oil spill. There it is. Okay. No spill. The floor is not slippery whatsoever.
We used to use sawdust, which was never as effective. Like it would clean up the oil, but you always had that slickness to the floor, and you could never get that off. And so you could clean up a spill, and then you'd still have that hazard of slipping. So this stuff is actually wonderful. We buy that at, I think it's Home Depot's or Lowe's. Either one of the two carry it. Another area that we found that we were having quite a few accidents was on our cellar stairs. They were made out of pressure-treated wood, but as the wood got wet or it got aged, like from beer men bringing in kegs, they'd break off the ends of the stairs, or else if somebody spilled something on there, they would get wet and slippery. So what we did was we added this is diamond plate. We had it bent to cover the stair tread, and we added to that diamond plate a sandpaper. It's like contact paper. You just peel off the back and you add them right to the top of the stair. So the diamond plate by itself is pretty non-skid. And then when you add that sandpaper surface to it, we no longer have them breaking off the edge of the stairs with the kegs, and you have a non-skid surface on top of the stair. These are years old, and that has worked fabulous. We have no more slip and falls on our stairs. And then the third area we looked at was burns. We're having quite a few burns. People are doing that all day long, putting their arms in and out of ovens and steamers and broilers. We were buying a real cheap oven mitt. Thought we were saving money until we found a really good quality oven mitt. It's called the Ultra Mitt. Actually got up to like 1400 degrees. And by using this mitt, we pretty much eliminated burns in the kitchen. These are about $20 per glove. So they're very, very expensive. But
They're worth it because if they get wet, your hands don't get wet. It doesn't seep through. They're like insulated.
this pair probably close to 6 months. But you can see they're worn, but they're not worn through. It never saved us any money by buying low quality equipment. It always fails, and then you end up getting an accident. So we always firmly believe in buying the best we can, and we gave safety a real priority in the restaurant by giving them the best equipment, and it's really made a difference. One of the nice things about having the safety committee, and there's this workers' comp mod that everybody talks about. Ours dropped so dramatically that now when we take our workers' comp out to bid, people look at us and like everybody wants to bid on our workers' comp because we don't have accidents. There are some years in the past couple of years where we don't have an accident for the whole year. When an insurance company sees that you're not turning in any claims, it just makes us a very sought after company to bid out.
Panel box still needs to be labeled. It still does. Sit on walk-in
I
cooler.
figure in the 15 years that we've had a safety committee here at the restaurant, we've gone from a workers' comp premium of $90,000 a year to currently we're paying $40,000 this year. That's of course with increased payrolls well above the 1993 level. So roughly $50,000 a year we're saving over 15 years. That's about $750,000. What effect has that had on our business? We've expanded probably about 3 or 4 times since 1993. 2 years ago we added this lighthouse. We've been able to buy new equipment, expansion, pay our employees more. It made a huge difference. Safety really does work.
And as far as accidents, there were no new accidents this month.
We really do have a great safety culture here.